Pool 2 is the smallest pool in Marvel Snap, and there's some really good cards and there's some really terrible cards. My name's Specimen. I've been playing Marvel Snap for the last 5 months in closed beta, and I'm going to be breaking down which are the best cards you should be including in your decks, which you should be avoiding at all costs. If you're new, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I also stream daily on Twitch around 1 PM UK time. Agent 13 is going straight into popping off. She's 1 energy, 2 stats. She is going to be creating a random card. You can get Thanos with Agent 13. You can get Galactus. It's one of the only ways you can get these cards. You can't even unlock them just yet, but Agent 13 can create them, even though they're both kind of bad, at least when she creates them. She's really good in Devil Dinosaur decks, so that's the big reason she's popping off. And also a really fun card to play because you're going to be able to get access to a lot of Pool 3 cards, so you can start learning some of the Pool 3 cards before you can actually unlock them. But mainly because of her value in Devil Dinosaur, she's adding a card to your hand. She's fantastic. Bucky Barnes up next. Bucky Barnes is 2 energy, 1 stat. When he is destroyed, he is going to spawn the Winter Soldier, which is a 6 body card with no ability. Bucky Barnes is really good. 6 stats for 2, but then also like with Carnage, for example, you're also getting +2 on his body, so it's kind of like 8 points or so for just 2. That's pretty insane. I think Bucky has to go into popping off. However, I will add, the problem with Bucky is the destroy decks themselves aren't that great. He's kind of carrying them a little bit, I would say. And so, while like he's probably more like around here, but we have to put him in popping off because the card is insane. It's also got some nice things you can do with like Death's Domain location. You can just put Bucky down there and he's going to come out as a 6 body. That's pretty nuts. We have Cloak up next. Cloak is 2 energy, 4 stats, and it's a really weird card. It is the next turn you play it, you can move cards there. So it's got big synergy with Kraven. Of course, it's got big synergy with movement decks. 4 stats for 2 is also really good. So it's definitely very decent. The reason I'm not going to put it in the popping off category is because actually a lot of the time, its ability can be a bit of a detriment. Because your opponent, especially if you play this on turn 5, you can just bamboozle yourself a lot of the time. Because your opponent can like move cards in similar to the New York location. A lot of you, I'm sure, be aware, like if New York shows up, it's kind of like turning the game into a bit of a coin flip. You don't really know what's going on. Cloak's definitely not popping off for me. I think this card looks a lot better on paper than it actually is in practice. I honestly don't think it's that good. So I'm going to put it very decent. It's definitely a very decent card. 4 stats for 2 with upside. It can pop off, but very decent for me. Our next, Ebony Maw. Ebony Maw's a really weird one. It's 7 stats for 1, which is insane. Of course it is. But Ebony Maw has an ongoing ability which stops you playing cards at its location. Furthermore, you can only play Ebony Maw before turn 3. You can't play it on turn 4, 5, or 6. For that reason, you're committing to a location very early on, and that's bad. I'm going to put it in the decent category. I would say at this stage in the game, it's probably meh. However, later on, there's some really interesting synergies you can do with this card in Pool 3. Zero, which cancels its ability, so you can play Zero, which is a 1 energy, 3 stat card to cancel Ebony Maw's ability, and then you're spending 2 energy for 10 stats. That's really good. There's also a card Viper, which you can put Ebony Maw to your opponent's side. It's 2 energy, so you play Ebony Maw and Viper on turn 3, and then Viper is going to move Ebony Maw to your opponent's side. So it's a very cool card, but I would say just avoid it at this stage. But honestly, decent 7 stats for 1. You can't really argue with that. Hobgoblin up next. Hobgoblin is a tricky one for me. I'm torn between popping off and very decent. I think I have to put it in popping off. The reason for that is Hobgoblin clogging your opponent's board is utterly bonkers. If you can play your Hobgoblin as the 4th card on your opponent's side, it just completely locks them out of that location. They go surprise Pikachu face. They're expecting to follow up. Also, it completely wrecks Iron Man. It's a way of getting points into lanes when you want to fill up. It's +2 points on Angela. The big downside of Hobgoblin is a lot of the time by turn 5, your opponent's lanes are already full, and then you're just guessing which lane to put Hobgoblin in it. And a lot of the time, you're going to be left with egg on your chin, and you're going to be having -8 points on your side of the board, which is obviously really bad. But I play this card in my good stuff mid-range deck, my favorite deck from Pool 2. So it has to go into popping off. I'm actually going to put it above these other 2 as well. There is another Goblin in the game in Pool 3, Green Goblin, which is 3 energy -3, same ability, it moves to your opponent's side, and that is a goated OP card. So Hobgoblin is definitely the worst of the 2 Goblins, but Green Goblin is one of the best cards in the whole game, in my opinion. Iceman up next. I think Iceman is the best 1-drop in Marvel Snap. There's another contender, but I think Iceman's the best. 1 energy, 2 stats. It is on reveal, making 1 card in your opponent's hand cost 1 more energy. It cannot hit 6 cost cards, but if you just imagine you're playing against Iceman, you've got Angela in hand, your opponent Iceman to you turn 1, and suddenly your Angela costs 3. Suddenly your whole curve goes. You might have to skip turn 2. That is a really, really big deal. Iceman is a goated card. I think it should get nerfed to 1 stat, and it would still be... Maybe it would still be good. I think it's OP. I think it's really, really OP. I think it's probably deserving of a nerf. Jubilee up next. 4 energy, 1 stat. Jubilee is a really interesting card if you build your whole deck around it. Of course, you can play Jubilee into Infinite if you high roll. It's not going to happen very often, but that's going to be 21 stats on turn 4, which is, of course, goated. But that's not happening all the time. Previously, Jubilee used to play the top card from your deck, so there was synergy with Chavez, where Chavez is often the top card. That's no longer a thing. There's also some synergy with Jubilee and Odin, but that's also going to be filling your Odin lane. Jubilee onto Kamal Taj is fantastic. I'm going to put Jubilee into very decent. I think people are going to probably expect her to go into popping off. But I think you really have to build your deck around Jubilee, and I don't think she's going to be worth it at this stage in the game to be playing most of the time. If there's certain featured and hot locations, like when there was this location, I can't remember what it's called, but you get like +6 energy or +5 energy. Jubilee was pretty good that week because like Infinite was maybe better, but I think she's very decent. She's definitely very decent. Like these very decent cards are very decent. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, I don't play her at all really. So yeah, Killmonger up next. Goated card. Wow. 3 energy, 3 stats, a complete meta definer in pool 2. Of course, in pool 1, all these decks that are just playing lots of 1-drops are super popular. Killmonger is killing every 1-drop on the board. It is an insane card. If you can play it on turn 6, often you're just winning. You get a lot of 8-cube victories with Killmonger as well because your opponent doesn't see it coming. It's just an absolutely insane goated card. I'm going to put it above Iceman even. I think it's insane. Because it's such a meta definer though, a lot of people are building their decks around this idea. So for example, people are playing less 1-drops, people are playing armor in their deck to protect their 1-drops. Also the Khazar decks, if people are really good and know what they're doing, what they can often do is just play all their 1-drops on turn 6. They maybe just don't play a 6-drop, they might play stronger and then just play all of their 1-drops on turn 6. So therefore Killmonger would have to be played on turn 6 and you would have to have initiative, you'd have to be going second, which if someone's holding all their 1-drops is going to be really difficult to do. So Killmonger's goated, but that's because it just defines the meta. The meta is warped around this card very much in pool 2, so it becomes worse for that reason because people are aware of it, but the card's insane. No doubt about it. One of the best cards in the game. Leech up next. Dead card, bruv. 5 energy, 3 stats. Leech is removing all the abilities from the cards in your opponent's hand. The problem with Leech is you can't play it until turn 5 at this stage in the game. It is really bad. There is some ways you can make Leech good, particularly if you get Leech off of X Mansion, because on turn 3 your X Mansion is going to come out and then Leech is going to come out and your whole opponent's hand loses ability. That's insane, but you can't play until turn 5. It's really, really bad. Do not play this card at all. Morbius up next. It's morbing time, baby. Morbius is 2 energy, 0 stats. Whenever you discard a card, it's getting +2. It's an ongoing ability. Morbius is going to go in the very decent category. Discard's still not great at this stage in the game, I would say. Often you can get Morbius up to like 6, 8 stats even. If you're getting 8 stats on Morbius, it's popping off. I think it probably deserves just to go slightly below these other cards though. But it is a really, really good card and it's very decent, that's for sure. Nakia up next. Now, Nakia is a card which has got a lot of reworks. It used to be auto-include, it used to be buffing your whole hand by 2 points, and it was a real meta definer. Right now, it's buffing your 2 cards to the left side of your hand by 2. So it's 5 stats total. I honestly think Nakia might be dead. I think this card's absolute garbage. It's certainly better than Leech, but I really don't think you should play this card. Of course, you can buff multiple man by 2 with this, but that's really awkward because you have to hold your multiple man in your hand until turn 4 with that play, and it's also going to have to be at the far left, which is not guaranteed. Yeah, I think it's really bad. Now, it could get better because there's maybe Black Panther coming at some point, and you'd expect these to have synergy. No leaks, but yeah, just saying. So maybe it gets better, but I would expect maybe Nakia gets another rework because I think this current rework she's got is just not popping off. She could maybe go here, but honestly, I think she's just bad. I think she's just bad, guys. We'll put her in Meh. We'll put her in Meh. I think she probably deserves to go in Meh. She's better than a lot of the cards in Dead, so, but she is very Meh. Very, very Meh indeed. Okoye up next. Okoye is buffing every card in your deck by 2. Okoye is a very decent card, in my opinion. A lot of these cards, like Morbius, Jubilee, Cloak, are going to be better maybe later on because they have more specific synergies. Okoye is just a really good mid-range card, though, that you can just put in your decks when you get her. Bear in mind, she has anti-synergy with Hobgoblin. So I'm also going to put Scorpion next to Okoye. These 2 cards are very, very similar. Scorpion is lowering every card in your opponent's hand by 1 power. Scorpion amazing if it hits something like Iron Man. Really bad if it hits something like Hobgoblin. Both these cards are very similar. You want to probably play them on turn 2 most of the time. I like both of them as just mid-range cards to include. I wouldn't play both of them in the same deck. I would just pick one or the other. If you're playing Iron Man, play Okoye. If you're playing Hobgoblin, play Scorpion. Kind of as simple as that, honestly. I like both these cards. Again, you can put them into most of your decks, but they're going to slowly but surely, as you unlock more Pool 2 cards and more Pool 3 cards, are both going to probably get replaced. Although Scorpion does see more play in general decks than I see Okoye in Pool 3. Rhino up next. Dead card. Absolute garbage. 3 energy, 3 stats. It is just removing the location and turning it into a ruin. For 1 energy less, you can play Scarlet Witch, which is replacing it into something random. Okay, that can backfire, sure. Rhino is so bad. Like, this card needs a buff desperately. Also, Storm is a similar card, right, for 1 point less. But instead of just removing it and turning it into a random location, like, it's turning it into a location which you can really benefit from. Rhino is awful. I've never, ever played this card apart from maybe when just upgrading commons. Like, do not play as garbage. I honestly think it might even be worse than Leech. At least Leech, like, there might be some hot location which you can be like, yeah, okay, I'll play Leech. I can get, like, Leech on turn 2. Rhino is just complete garbage. Speaking of complete garbage, we have Sabretooth. Sabretooth is 3 energy, 4 stats, and when it's destroyed, it comes back as a 0-cost card. The problem with that is you're still just playing a 4-point card for 3 energy with no real ability. It's +2 on your Carnage. It's not a big deal. It's really bad. Don't play this card. It needs a buff. Sandman up next. Sandman is one of the more difficult cards to evaluate. Sandman as well as Killmonger were actually Pool 3 cards when the game first came out, but they've been moved into Pool 2. Sandman is going to be really nice at dealing with these Kazoo decks, like playing lots of 1-drops. You can play Sandman on turn 4, and if they're holding on to all these 1-drops, then suddenly they're not going to be able to beat you. I think the card is really good, but also it's only 1 point for 4. I am torn between very decent and decent. Personally, I've not really used Sandman much. You're going to have to really build your decks around it. I think this is going to be a controversial one because I think I'm going to get some backlash for this, but I'm going to put Sandman in the decent category. It's definitely not just like that mid-range value like this. You really have to think about it. It's a big brain card. I would like to try and experiment with Sandman more, but 1 stat on turn 4, that's not a lot of stats. So I'm going to put it in the decent category. Let me know what you think about Sandman. That's an interesting one. Up next we have Shang-Chi. Goated card. Wow. Shang-Chi is this Paul's version of Enchantress. A lot of you know Enchantress is one of my favorite cards in the game, and Shang-Chi is also one of my favorite cards. Often you just play one or the other. For example, if you're playing Armor, I play Enchantress. If I'm not, I probably play Shang-Chi on average. Also depends on the meta, right? If there's lots of Iron Mans and Blue Marvels, you're going to want to play Enchantress. If there's lots of tool cards, you play Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi is killing all 9 power units in your opponent's row. Insane on turn 6. Huge surprise value and huge swing. Let's say your opponent has a Shavez. No, let's not say Shavez. Let's just say they have like a 9-point card on turn 5 because Shavez is a 6-drop. Let's say they have the monster location, right? The 9-point monster in there. On turn 6, you can play your Shang-Chi, and then it's playing for 12 points of swing. And you can still play another card alongside it. You still have 2 energy spare, or you could just let your Sunspot grow. Shang-Chi is insane at winning you 8 cubes. It's insane stats for 4. Of course, the big downside of it is that a lot of the time it's not going to be able to be played. But you can just leave it in your hand, right? You don't have to play it. What a card. What a card. Speaking of goated cards, my favorite card in the game is up next. Storm. I flipping love this card so much. I think most people would probably put Storm down here, but I flipping love this card with all my heart. Storm is flooding a location, meaning that next turn is the last turn cards can be played there. So There's lots of synergies you can do with this. You can play Storm on turn 3 and then Jessica Jones on turn 4 to get 10 stats in that lane. You can then move Nightcrawlers in there. You can move Vision in there. You can Iron Fist cards in there, Heimdall cards in there. But also, you're locking down a location early. So like you can have Sunspot, for example, in there and then like protect it with armor and then play Storm. It just secures you a lane early, and then you can just focus all your points onto one other lane. Like just winning a lane by turn 4, just knowing that you only need one more is just amazing. I love snapping on turn 3 as I'm playing my Storm. Sometimes it backfires, but if you have enough synergies in your deck, it's amazing. And not to mention the huge upside as well, that she's replacing the location. So she's like a Rhino for getting rid of a location you don't want to deal with, but with huge upside. I absolutely love this card. On my main account, I have a gold foil for Storm. I'm really hoping to get like a monochrome version of her because I think that's going to look sick. My favorite card in Marvel Snap. I absolutely love her. Sunspot up next. Sunspot is also a goated card. Should probably do it like this though, I think. Even though the Storm's my favorite. Sunspot growing by 1 for every energy you don't spend. Phenomenal. Really good combo with armor to, play around Killmonger. You can just let it grow. A lot of the time, again, in Storm lanes, it's really nice because you can just let it grow as many points as you need. Often it's going to be playing for like 3 points or more. Sometimes it can play for loads in locations with like Cloning Vats and Sinister London. You can just get loads of Sunspots and just let them play out and do their thing. Great card. Can't really go wrong with it. Nice. Up next we have Swarm. Swarm is a really interesting one because when you discard it, it costs 0. And if you buff Swarm with, for example, Nakia, which used to be the big combo, then you've got 5-point swarms and you can discard them more times and you get more swarms. Furthermore, it has some interesting synergy with the collector because every time you discard a swarm, it's getting added to your hand. Your collector can get points. I think Swarm has to go into popping off. I really, really do. I think it's an amazing card. Similar with Bucky, the problem with Swarm is the rest of the cards that you can really combine with it. But I think it's an amazing card. You can definitely build a whole deck around it. Maybe get slightly better in pool 3 when you get access to some more discard cards. Yeah, definitely a great card though, in my opinion. Again, the key to Swarm is buffing it up. If you can get Swarm buffed up and discard it multiple times, get the Collector on the board, it's very, very sweet. Speaking of the Collector, he is next. And the Collector is a weird one for me to evaluate because Collector previously was one of the most broken pool 2 cards. It used to be 2 energy and 0 stats, but instead of buffing by 1 for every time you add a card to your hand, it was buffing by 2. Now, at the time of recording, I've only just unlocked Collector, but I haven't played the Devil Dinosaur deck myself. I've played against it a bunch, and I'm not really seeing Collector get more than 6 stats very often. I think a lot of people are going to be expecting Collector to go into popping off. I think Collector is very decent and nothing more. Moon Girl's buffing it by 3. Sentinel, it's in popping off. It's in popping off. I think like if Bucky and Swarm are here, like you kind of have to put Collector in popping off still. It is a banger. I think Jubilee needs to go up too. It's a tricky one, man. It's a tricky one. Jubilee's very good. Yeah, let's put them up. We could honestly drop Bucky and Swarm. I think, okay. I'm actually liking this more. I'm liking this more. I think this is more reasonable. I think we go like this kind of order on these. It's hard when you do tier lists to like, you have to just, shuffle it around. There's sometimes like very small differences between being popping off and very decent, but I guess the key thing is like Collector is in one of the best decks, right? Bucky Barnes is not. Even though Bucky Barnes on its own is really, really popping off, the rest of the decks just mean that actually that is part of, you have to include Carnage, you have to include Deathlock. These are not amazing cards, right? So yeah, I'm happy with this. Jubilee, I'm actually going to drop down to very decent still. I don't think she's that good at this stage. She does get better in pool 3, but honestly not even by that much. Infernaut has to go into popping off, right? It has to go. Like some people say Infernaut is goated, not for me. The reason, oh no, mate, controversial. I don't like this card that much, okay? Like, we have to put it on popping off though. You can skip turn 5, let your Sunspot grow, then play your big 20 points. It's kind of insane. You can Jubilee into this card. When you get into pool 3, you can Lockjaw into this card. You can Dracula, which is going to consume Infernaut, and then you get like 24 points. You can discard Infernaut and then replay it with like Ghost Rider or Hela. Like, it's goated when you hit pool 3. But at this stage, in pool 2, I would just say it's popping off. I actually don't like the card personally that much in pool 2. I don't play it, ever. but it is really good. So we'll put it on popping off. Again, when you hit pull 3, it's up here, but this is more just like evaluating these cards for this stage in the game. I think it's like not very useful for me to see like, oh yeah, Ebony Maw is great in pull 3, but it's really not a good hit, right? I think it's just better for you guys to get an idea of what the cards are like at this stage in the game. Vision up next. Vision is a weird one. I actually like the card a lot. 5 energy, 7 stats. You can move it once, so it's like a Daddy Nightcrawler. The problem is, this card would be much better as a 4 energy card with less stats. I'm going to put Vision into Meh, and I'm going to drop Nakia into Dead. Yeah, I do kind of like Vision, but meh. You know? Meh. You could put it in Decent, but it's just not great. Vulture up next. Vulture, I have to think, is in popping off. If you move it once, it gets +5. So all you have to do is move it once, and it's 8 stats for 5. 8 stats for 3, that's amazing. You can move it many, many times, and you can get this card to like 20 plus points pretty easily. It's a great card. Finally, we have Warpath, the last card. Warpath gets really good in pull 3 with Destroyer. It's 9 stats for 4 if you have an empty lane. Kind of difficult to achieve that. Definitely gets better in Destroyer decks in pull 3. It's 1 point more than Jessica Jones, right? But Jessica Jones is much easier to achieve. So a lot of the time, if you're just playing a value deck, you're going to play Jessica Jones over Warpath. I think Warpath is going to go into the decent category for me. And again, when you hit pull 3, it goes up into very decent. That's my tier list, guys. See if there's anything we want to change. I'm happy with the dead category. You could maybe drop like Sandman, Ebony Maw into Meh. I think we should probably drop Ebony Maw into Meh for this stage. Okoye Scorpion probably deserve to be a little bit higher up here because they're just good mid-range cards. I'm happy with like Jubilee, Bucky. I do like all the cards in this. I like all these. I'm happy. There's my tier list. I'm done. It's finalized. What do you guys think? Is there anything you disagree with? Let me know what you think about Sandman in particular. I'm very interested in your thoughts. If you watch this far in the video, please give it a like. Check me out on Twitch as well. And the keyword, the code word is, the code word for today is, let's just say Sandman. He's been the discussion. Sandman. Cool. Thanks so much. See you on the next one. Bye.